June the 4th, 1942. I always jokingly mentioned that I couldn't afford a honeymoon, so I got married on May the 19th, and I came here immediately.
Oh, so just a few months after
Yes.
your marriage.
So I came, as I had said, on a honeymoon with the 200 other Japanese people who were coming to the Sugar project.
Okay, so you mentioned, okay, so you came down with 200 people around, and
Yes.
who else did you come down with?
Well, the group that I was with the very last group of the Sugar Beet project workers. Mr. Takeo Kawata, he still resides here. Mr. and Mrs. Yamakami. Mr. Yamakami passed away last year. Mrs. Yamakami is still here. Those are about, oh, and Mr. Jack Urano and Mrs. Urano. And there are other people who came with us that I was familiar with, Mr. Shikade and all those people who came from the Mission area, Mission BC area. But they all stayed here only for months, Sugar Beet project season, and then they moved to Ontario.
Okay, so what was the main reason for so many Japanese Canadians coming to Manitoba?
Well, in order to explain that to you, because of the shortage of labor in the farming and the sugar beet industry, because of the conscription that the Canada got into. In the earlier stage of the war, well, Canada did not have conscription, but because of the intensity of the war in Europe, well, they had to resort to conscription, and conscription came in. So the Manitoba Sugar Beet Company and the Raymond Sugar Beet Company from Lethbridge area, they approached the British Columbia Security Commission to see if they could get Japanese farmers, because they knew that there were quite a number of Japanese people engaged in small fruit farming in the Fraser Valley, in the Maple Ridge area, Mission, Haney, Port Hammond, Pitt Meadows, and Lake Surrey, where I was working as a secretary treasurer for the Farmers Cooperative, Surrey Berry Growers Cooperative Association. And we were approached by the BC Security Commission and the Sugar Beet Company representatives, asking us if we would take part in the Sugar Beet project. Now they sent Manitoba Sugar Company as well as the Raymond Sugar Company came over and gave us a very rosy picture of what we would be able to earn here in Manitoba as well as Alberta. And in those days, any person residing in the west of the Rockies to think that they go east of the Rockies is an unthinkable thing, you know. They think we're a bunch of nuts that are going to a godforsaken country, because we were told so many scary stories about the harsh winter and all that. But after thinking over, after the discussion with the Sugar Beet people from both the Alberta and Manitoba, well, we decided, when I say we, well, I'm talking about the people residing in the farming area in the Fraser Valley, because I was at that time involved in the small fruit growing cooperative organization in Surrey, BC, just not very far away from New Westminster. And these same people approached the people around Maple Ridge area, Mission, and so on and so forth. And we were the ones that knew something about farming, although sugar beet farming is completely different from small fruit farming. But we felt that it would be better to have the family together because we felt that the war wouldn't last that long. And at the same time, we could be of some help to the Canadian government, our government, because like say in my case, my dad came to this country when he 1892. He got naturalized in 1903, and I'm one of his offspring. I'm one of the older nieces, and we felt that at least we could contribute something towards the war efforts, and that was another thing that prompted us from coming. I think the main reason is under the BC Security Commission forced removal plans, the only places that we could move as a family unit would be to come to the sugar beets in Manitoba or Alberta. And we were reluctant to come to Manitoba because Manitoba we felt was way further out. And when returning to BC, it would be harder to come back, you see, because that's a simple way of thinking. But as I had mentioned before, that any person residing in BC at the time, going over the Rockies was something, to think about. So that is the reason why that we came.
Okay. So when you came here, where did you first originally reside in Manitoba?
Well, first of all, I should explain to you that when we first came, they had a manning pool similar to that of, you heard of Hastings Park, the manning pool in British Columbia. We were put in a old immigration hall right by the CPR tracks, by the Royal Alexander Hotel, which was the CP hotel. And we were put in there as soon as we came. Female and male were segregated. So especially in my case, well, it's quite a honeymoon.
Yeah.
But then every morning, the farmer comes over and then look us over. And you can't blame the farmers because, they have to get a family with many workers as possible. If you were to hire a family, a young married couple, well, a man and a wife and a couple of children, the only worker he would have would be this male person. So anyway, they looked us over, and then just like in the old slave days, I was joking there, I mentioned this, but it was like that. I felt that, what the heck is this, because the guys come over and they look you over, and then they said you sort of a thing, and they were hired by these farmers. And the farmers, once they hire you, they have responsibility too, that they have to give us housing and so on and so forth. But a lot of these farmers did not have extra houses to accommodate the workers. So what we call sugar beet shacks. They, uh, the BC Security Commission got this sort of a housing project going, and they built these shacks, and then placed right in the middle of nowhere, especially like by our family was sent over to just was St. John Baptiste and Rosenfeld. It's about around 20 miles from the highway there. And when we went there, this lonely shack was placed right in the middle of nowhere. And water, in order to get drinking water, we have to go 3 miles to a lagoon, you know, the Manitoba farm is completely different from farms in British Columbia, you know. In British Columbia, you holler and you can talk to the next door neighbor, but here, you know, 40, 50 miles is nothing. And so that was quite a difference. And then, well, we, like, sister, 2 brothers, my mother and dad, and another family friend of ours. Well, we stayed all in this small shack, and we did the thinning and hoeing. That's the first job that we had to do. And then you wait until the sugar beet grows, and then the harvesting starts in the fall. But before the harvesting starts, well, my parents did the original hoeing and thinning for this Mr. Schrader, who was the owner, a German descent, Canadian. And they moved to Portage of Prairie, near Portage of Prairie. But my wife and I, we left my mother and dad's right after hoeing and thinning was over. We came into the city in August of 1942. And the reason for that is I had a special permit to come into Winnipeg. And that is before the Pearl Harbor incident, when I was working for this Farmers Cooperative in Surrey, Mr. Nakamura, Toru Nakamura, who was an expert chick-sexer from Japan, he made arrangements he was approached, I should say, by Hambley Hatcheries on Logan Avenue. It's one of the larger hatcheries. I think it was the largest hatcheries in Manitoba at the time. And I made the contract negotiations for Mr. Nakamura. And I was thinking of coming here at the time. That's the reason why that when this forced removal thing came, well, Assistant Commissioner of the RCMP, Mr. Mead, said that, well, if I would, he said he would give me a special permit to enter Winnipeg. And then I had mentioned before, well, I got married after that, and then I came here.
So basically the families that came here, they had no choice in where they originally were sent to.
No, because as I had mentioned, only places that we could move as a family unit would be to come to the sugar beet projects. Any male person of military age between 18 and 46 would be sent out to the bush camps in Ontario for the road camps in BC. And that is another reason why that these people residing in the farming area in BC felt that it would be a good idea to at least do something that they are know something about doing, instead of going into a logging camp or something like that.
Okay. Now your first winter here, what did you think of it?
Well, the day we arrived, it was a real hot day, and then we got placed in this Manning pool in this old immigration hall, very close to Main Street. So we ventured out into the Main Street, and the first thing we encountered was people gawking at us, as if like a monkey in a zoo, so to speak. Some very polite people, they ask permission to look at you. But those are the kind of incidents that we had, because the very few people, met Japanese, person of Japanese racial origin, I should say. Whether they're Canadian born or not, well, to them, they can't tell the difference. And they all, thought that we all came from, goggle-eyed and bucktooth, and that this was stereotype Japanese that they used to hear about. And another comment I always used to hear was, "Oh, you speak very good English." And he himself, person speaking to me, could hardly speak English well. And that's the kind of things. But for the people as a whole, they were brainwashed, because there was quite a bit of bad publicity that the BC government had been sending out to the rest of the Canadians, that people here in Manitoba, or like Alberta, I believe it would have been the same thing, or in Ontario, that why should we accept these bad people when you fellas don't want it? So attitude, bad attitude is already created before we came. And so thinking all that, because of the very mosaic congregation of various nationalities here, like Ukrainians, Polish, Jewish, and all those people, and Germans, they understood much more than the people in BC. When I say people in BC, the British Columbia is dominated by Anglo-Saxons. So these people who were residing here, they themselves came as an immigrant, and they went through a heck of a lot of abuses too. So especially the Jewish people, as well as Germans, they were very kind to us. The Jewish people, I think, because of their own experiences of being discriminated and, through so many years in the history, they were very compassionate towards us. The German people were very nice to us. I think in the terms of their sort of blood brothers, so to speak, they were on the same side of the war, because Japan and Germany was fighting against the whole world at the time. But on the whole, the German people were very cooperative. active, and they were assisted us in, helping us finding accommodations and so on and so forth. Because when I first came into Winnipeg, I didn't know the city of Winnipeg. So as soon as I got into CN station, I bought a map of Winnipeg and then bought the free press. I looked for rent per room section, and I phoned from the station, and I still remember it was Dominion Street. That lady said that she wouldn't mind renting a room to me, because I had mentioned to her that I'm a Canadian born Japanese, recently married, no pets, no children, no pets, and she was very nice about it, and she said that she would rent the place. So I only had about 3 suitcases, but that was my total belongings. I put that in this taxi, and then my wife and I both drove up to this place. As soon as she opened the door, I realized that, by golly, she changed her mind. Because she said, I'm sorry I said I'll rent the room to you, but, if I rent the room to you, the other people, residing here said that they'll move out. So I said, well, what can I say? By that time, the taxi was gone. So she was good enough to phone another taxi for us, and then we came back to the CN station, and we checked our bags again, and then we took this time we took this one person showed us the route of in those days it was streetcars, and he said, well, it's easy from here to go to this way up Portage Avenue, and why don't you start coming down toward downtown? So I felt at first that it's hard to get something near downtown, so I started out from just about the area where I first went by cab around the ring. And from 10 o'clock in the morning to, it took us until 4 o'clock. We, knocking doors where it said room for rent. And some of them were kind enough to say that, oh, we forgot to take off the sign while it's already rented. But the others that, some said that they gave us a very high, rent, and no one would even rent a small room for that kind of money. And finally, I ended up on Kennedy Street, right behind Knox United Church, and I saw the sign, room for rent. So I was ringing the bell, and then no one comes out, and the newspaper boy comes and says, "Oh, Mrs. McCracken, today's her washing day. She's down in the basement, so you gotta go inside." And here I goes in, and it's a dark place, and I was hollering, saying, "Hello, hello, hello." And this lady comes and up from downstairs, and she's wiping her hand on the apron, and she said, "What can I do for you?" So I said, "Would you rent a room to me?" And she said, "Why do you say that?" So I said, "Well, I've been walking around from 10 o'clock, and I said, no one seemed to want to rent the room to us." And he said, "The only room that I have is up in the attic. That's the only room that I have. So I'll show it to you, and if you like it." Well, by that time, anything was okay, So she was good enough to rent it to us. But in those days, all these places that we were able to rent was infested with bed bugs. Boy, oh boy, you were up all night just about scratching yourself. Those are the kind of conditions that we had. But the people were, really come down, and they realized what we were going through. They were quite nice about it. But jobs were hard to get. It's only work that I knew was office work from accounting, so I tried to get into a chartered accounting firm when I first came here. I went to just about every major accounting firms, and only two, they just thought that they might have an opening for me, but after thinking it over, they decided that they poor politics to hire Japanese because, you know, in auditors, they move around. So I finally ended up in working as in the Jewish old folks home on Magnus Avenue. It was a spanking brand new building. It's a three-story building there that they look after the aged old people. And they have a hospital section on the third floor. And majority of the workers there was now Japanese persons of Japanese racial origin who used to be here to work here in the railway industry, like red caps and all that. There was only about 28 of them when we first came, and they lost their jobs too, and they were working in this Jewish old folks home, quite a few of them. So I heard this job was open, so I, after trying the office work and then one of the largest taxi firm here, Moore's Taxi at the time, and you couldn't even get a job as a taxi driver. So Mr. Osowski, the supervisor, said, well, what were you doing? And I mentioned that, well, I'm an accountant. And he said, well, it's the only job we have is a combination dishwasher and a waiter. Because ambulance people come down to the dining room to eat, you see. So then he said, there's a orderly job here. We pay $5 more. That's $40 living, you know. And so I said, well, by golly, I said, well, if I get $5 more, I know a hospital, but I've been in and out of the hospital when I was young. So I said, I'll take that job then. And so here I goes over to first day of my job, you know, and goes over there. And by golly, I somehow managed to lift this guy from bed and put him on the chair and make the bed. But noontime, I have to help him to feed him. See? And he had this, what is that, Parkinson, is it? That he shakes. And this guy is shaking like crazy, you know, like this. And then here, I got a bowl of soup and I'm trying to feed him. And I said, boy, I gave up. And I went down the stairs and I told Mr. Osowski, you could have your $5. I said, I'll be the dishwasher. I worked at the, as a dishwasher, you know, waiter for 32 days. Still remember, 32 days. And my wife worked as a, you know, she made beds and all that. So that was an experience. And then I went back again to see if I could get some kind of office jobs. And I did the same thing, going around the CA firms again. But this time I got smarter and and lazier, I think. I didn't like walking around pounding the beach, you know. So where the manager was in it, I got the telephone number and I phoned them. And it so happened that I hit this Harold Hirose company. And the chap said to come on over, so I thought, what, nothing to lose, and I went. And, well, after speaking to him, he said, gee, you're more Canadian than I am. He said, because I mean, I mentioned that my dad came in 1892, and I was Canadian born, since I come from Scotland. So I got into that work. And then this when I first came here, the first thing I realized was the condition of the living, the accommodations that all these people had. Because before going over to where we went, to St. James Baptist, I borrowed Mr. Nakamura's automobile. Mr. Nakamura came earlier in January, before the forced removal thing came up. Now, where were we?
Mr. Nakamura?
Oh, yes. I borrowed Mr. Nakamura's automobile, and I went around visiting some of the people that I knew from BC, and listened to, their experiences. They were the earlier, the people that came a little earlier than us. And I noticed the houses that, some of the houses that they were living. So I was quite concerned, and then few of us, like Gramps Onodera, Mr. Tatsuo Onodera, who lives here in Winnipeg right now. He was with the Stevenston bunch. You must have heard that Mr. Sato, Shinjiro Sato, he was with a group of, like with Mr. Hirayama, that came from Stevenston area. And there was quite a controversy at the time, because the farming area people, like in Surrey and Pitt Meadow, felt that why should the person engaged in fishing industry go to farming, when there are a lot of other farmers who would like to go to the sugar beets project, see. But like this Gramps Onodera, I knew from before in BC, so we sat talking and said that, by golly, we should organize something here in order to act as a liaison between the BC Security Commission, the Sugar Beet Company, and the Japanese group. And I understood that the people who came earlier, like Mr. Sato and Mr. Hirayama, who was with this fishermen's group, they too felt the necessity of having some kind of an organization. But I didn't know them at that time, because I was with the last group of people coming. And so there was concerns from the other groups too, family. And then after I got into the city in August, meeting was called among these few people who were concerned, like Sato, Mr. Sato, Tom Mitani, this Lawrence Mitani's father, and Mr. Hirayama. We felt that we should have some sort of an organization. And that time, while my parents were moving to Portage, as I had said before, and so I was away and I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but they held a meeting, and then they organized the Manitoba Japanese Canadian Japanese Joint Council they formed, and that was the beginning of this joint council thing. And this is just secretly organized, so to speak, because we approached in the earlier stage, we approached Mr. Graham, who was the first commissioner for the British Columbia Security Commission. He said that, well, I understand what you people are concerned about, and he said that I'd like to see myself an organization like that you people are proposing, but according to the regulations, I can't give you authorization. So it fell through, you see. But this group, Mr. Sato Hirayama and myself and Mr. Yoshino and then a few others, and I have the names over here, that yeah, Mr. Otsu, Meg Otsu's father, you know, there was a fisherman's group. And then they had this meeting, and then they finally organized it. But we had no authorization from the BC Security Commission until 1943. I have a letter. And then I got the list of areas that you can look at. I think we had 16 areas.
16
But
areas
the
regarding what?
biggest problem was the communication, because as you must have all heard that you know, there was according to the order in council, you know, in order to move more than 10 miles, we had to have our RCMP permit. So in order to have any kind, and then not more than 2 people can congregate, you see. So that was the regulation that Mr. Graham had to abide by, and you can't blame him because he's a commissioner and he had to do that. But we organized anyways, and through you know, grapevine sort of thing, you know, we had telephone conversation too once in a while, but those things are all monitored, I think, so we didn't try not to telephone and all that. But we had advanced sort of network of communication by, you know, the people going, you know, came in with a special permit, and then they're going back while we tell them that, you know, we're having a meeting and so on, you know, and that's the way. And now the meeting places was a big problem. See, in order to get 16 to 17 people to meet, well, you know, you can't just meet anywhere. So, but still, while we can't afford a hall of any kind because it's very conspicuous to, you know, that we're having a meeting when we're not supposed to be. So we were moving from one hotel to another. Every time we held a meeting, we used to, like, commercial hotel down on the Winnipeg south there, you know, near the CN station, and that the building is still there. We met over there and other hotels. And then we sat on floors and on beds and so that's the way we carried out the thing. But the Beach Security Commission realized too that by having an organization would benefit, it make their job easier too, because you know, these sugar beet workers were scattered all over, you know, from within the radius of 75 miles from Winnipeg. You know, the furthest was like south was in Emerson, now Dufras, Lorette, Saint Jean Baptiste, Saint Pierre, and back then this way it's Oak Bank, Elm Creek, and then toward the west, well, as far as Portage Prairie, a little further down, Austin, McGregor, around there, you see. So it was quite long distance that these people have to you know, come out in order to attend these meetings. And there's a biggest concentration of Japanese group was in Curtis Siding. It's on the south side of the Assiniboine River. And that's where majority of the Stevenson people were there, like Mr. Nakai, like Shinji too, I think they were there too. The Kaitas, Roy Kaita's family. Those people are all in. And this is the, we got to give credit to Mr. Tully, who was one of the farmers, big farmers around there, in Curtis Siding. He was our council member of the Portage La Prairie, city of Portage La Prairie. And when he decided to take in a group of Japanese to work on his farms, well, there were quite a bit of, people who felt that he should be doing. And but he felt that there's nothing wrong, that these people are Canadians. Most of them are Canadians. And he said, why shouldn't I hire? And so he went against the grain and he hired a whole bunch of, I think it was about 10 families in this one location. And he ended up marrying one of the Lim Kai's husband's sister. He married Mr. Tully, I think. But the main concern of, as I had mentioned before, was the living conditions, especially with the they saw the houses that most of the houses, I should say, were these temporary makeshift shacks at what we call a sugar beet houses. And like Art Mickey and his family was one of the luckier ones, They were in St. Agatha, which is very far away from Winnipeg. And this farmer that had extra house, although it isn't too big, and quite a number of people lived in it, but at least they lived in a house. But the majority of us probably lived in these makeshift houses.
What were they made out of?
Well, it's board, and they have tar paper in between. But some of them, you can still see the outside.
Yeah.
That's what's a great concern. And as I had mentioned before, we heard so much about the severe winter here. So that's why we felt that we should get the government officials to give us some more protection for the winter month. And another concern was sugar beet work is a seasonal work. Now, after the harvesting is over, what we call topping, and you top it's a beet. It's just like a big radish. So you have to top it off. After that work is over, then these people, they have to be cooped up in these shacks, especially when the winter time. You can't, as you all know, it's impossible to go around, walking around, especially during, like we were in St. Jean there, in the middle of nowhere, you're, the shack, well, by golly, you wouldn't be able to get out of the house. So, and another thing was, our contract with the Manitoba Sugar Beet Company was very bad compared to the Alberta sugar beet workers. When I say this, the reason being the soil itself isn't, good for sugar beet, like in Alberta. Our tonnage, per acre is well below the Alberta farmer. So, and then to top it off, well, our rate was a little lower than Alberta too. And there our, you know, crop wasn't that good, so I mean, and a lot of people had quite a bit of concern about, you know, the financial end of it. And that's the reason why that we were constantly, that was another reason why that we had to have some kind of a group organization to negotiate these kind of a thing. And that, so these are the kind of work that this joint council did in those days.
Can we just pause for a second?
Mention about you know, this joint council is comprised mostly of Niseis. There are quite a few Niseis, the older Niseis too. But you know, the people who came to Manitoba, you know, their children were quite young yet, you see. So, but the older ones, well, I'm one of the Niseis, but because of this necessity of having some kind of a liaison organization and being able to speak Japanese as well as English, and I was able to live in the city, so it was very accessible to the BC Security Commission to do anything. So Mr. Sato, who was the very active, he was able to come into the city because his wife was very ill, and that is the reason why that he was able to be able to come to stay in the city. So he and I did all of the work, but I mean all the negotiation and all that. Well, so Mr. Sato and I, after you know, we conducted the work, but like getting back to the organization of the younger group. Well, they call themselves, there was a younger group called Niseis, Manitoba Niseis, they call Niseis. And before the Manitoba JCC Outlook was started to be published as a monthly bulletin in 1951, that the Niseis used to send out bulletins to younger people in English. And Mr. Elmer Oiki, Mr. Bill Sasaki was the first Japanese to become an alderman, in those days called an alderman in the city of Winnipeg. And Miss Margaret Inoue, and Mrs. Lyons, they were very active. And Elsie Sasaki, Mas Nishi's wife, Bill Sasaki's sister, and they were quite active. And they were publishing this bulletin from Mr. Sasaki's home on 12 Van Buren Place near the Misericordia Hospital. Now, the concern of the Joint Council was to look after the living conditions, so on and so forth. And then because of the seasonal nature of the Shilby work, we had to think of some work that will bring in income during the off season. And now the biggest concern here for the BC Security Commission was the public's thinking of the Orientals work cheaper, on a cheap labor. So they were quite concerned that some people take advantage of us and would hire us at the cheap labor. But we were very mindful of that because we didn't want to create any kind of a friction between the labor forces. So, but the thing was, accommodation was one thing. As I had mentioned before, it's very hard for us to rent any kind of accommodation. Now, that was the first thing. And the next thing was, even if we did get a job, the jobs that we were able to get were very menial jobs, like working in the fur trade, like the furrier, we're tanning, Dominion tanners, American furriers, and things like that, you see. And like abattoirs, like the Burns and Company, Canada Packers, meat packers, all those, dirty work that, these are the only jobs available to us. But there were other jobs, there were all kinds of jobs, but I mean, we weren't able to get it, you see. So that is another area that the Joint Council, through myself, was in the city, while we worked quite hard and try to get people into better accommodations. I mean, accommodations as well as jobs. Now, in the first winter, then the shortage of domestic thing came up. Now there was a request for domestics, but the girls were quite young, and the parents they were reluctant to let their daughters, precious daughters, come out to this city, and they were didn't know what was going to happen to them. That's where the YWCA came into the picture. And YWCA through Mrs. Thelma Scambler, Miss McGaffin, and all these people, they worked very closely with us, and we finally came to terms. They were to monitor these people in the city. They first investigate the families, where these kids are going. And after this thing started to work out a little, then Nisets, the girls start coming in, so they have to have some kind of a organization, and they call themselves Nisets. So among the young people, the group, well, the Manisays, and the Nisets were part of the Manisays, but there was a special girls group that met at the YWCA on the Wink Place there. And that's why, like these young boys too, YWCA is a place for females, but we were given special permission, more or less, to have a social and things at the YWCA. And another thing I'd like to mention is when we first came here, you know, like Miss Stadler and Miss McGaffin, you know, these people who were missionaries in Japan. And when they heard that a group of Japanese people were coming, they were good enough to come to the station to greet us. In the middle of the night, you know, sometimes the train come in late, like the Stadler, and then, you know, they came out, you know, to greet us. And it was, that's why I think some people became Christian because of this humanitarian, you know, Christian teaching that these people have instilled in these young, you know, the people who moved here. And to this day, I think, you know, there's still that influence. I think a lot of these younger and older, you know, ladies, in those days they were younger ladies, but I mean, now these people, I think they realize that, you know, the kind of assistance that they receive from these people. So YWCA played a big part in the establishment of, you know, our, as you know, of, I should say you must know that 99% of the sugar beet workers all came into the city after a while by 1946. So it's then now coming into the city, what we had to worry about as a joint council was because we were always reminded that you know, we don't assimilate. Japanese people don't assimilate, and that was, we were told in BC. But because it didn't, that we didn't assimilate, we tried to assimilate, but we were forced to, you know, live in a sort of a ghetto setup because, you know, they won't, Occidental companies won't hire you and all these things, you see. So these things all contributed towards, you know, there is both sides of the story. The others say that, well, you don't assimilate, but I mean, these people won't let you assimilate. So with this in mind, even coming into the city, the Joint Council felt that we should be, you know, not forget the kind of discrimination that we received in BC. We don't want to go through that again. So we advised the people coming into the city, gradually they start coming into the city. And we felt that, you know, don't congregate in one area. We try to, you know, get them to, you know, stay in different areas. Mm. So these are the kind of things too that Joint Council had to keep in their minds. And like I remember that even the sugar beet contract thing, we even were going on strike. Mrs. Sato and I was called in on the carpet there, and we were told that they're going to kick us out of Manitoba because we're troublemakers. Oh. That we didn't get to that extent, but I mean, anyways, I think overall, the BC Security on the report, Dion's report too, I think he mentions too about the how valuable the Joint Council was, you know, in our in the course of you know, those days that we were trying to establish ourselves and to live in Manitoba, because the original government policy was when they asked the various provinces to take us from BC to come to these different areas, they said that soon after the war was over, they were to send us back to BC. But as you know, in 1949, that was the first time, in April 1st, 1949, that order was rescinded. And that's why when the redress settlement was made, well, we came to the understanding with the government that that would be the deadline, that that restriction to return to BC was called off, you see. So a lot of people ask why April 1st, 1949, because I noticed that, you know, some people were born in May 1949 and they weren't able to get $21,000. But that is the reason why. In you know, as a whole, when you look at all the people in various provinces, I think Manitoba did fairly well, you know. I think on the average, our living conditions, now the older as well as the young, I think we haven't got a very exceptionally wealthy people, but we haven't, on the other extreme, we haven't got that either. But in some areas, like in larger areas like Vancouver and Toronto, I find that there are quite a bit of difference. There are a lot of rich people and quite a few, you know, on the below poverty line people. But I think in our case, see, okay. Now another thing here, after the this joint council was formed, and then like in 1945, in the early part of 1945, myself, Elmer Oike, Bill Sasaki, and we joined up in the Canadian Armed Forces, and then we went overseas. So before going, well, we organized the Manitoba Japanese Canadian Citizens Association. And so far as as a Japanese Canadian Citizens Association, we had a organization called Manitoba Japanese Canadian Citizens League, taking in the same you know, the format as the Japanese American Citizens League. They still call themselves Japanese American Citizens League. And when we were in BC, we had an organization called Manitoba Japanese Canadian Citizens League. And in 1936, you must have heard that we sent a delegation to Ottawa, Ms. Shodo, Mr. Ogashi, Dr. Bando, and the famous Dr. Hayakawa, regarding the franchise thing, that we did not have the franchise, and we thought that we should fight for it. So in 1945, I think at that time the New Canadian was here. See, New Canadian, after the forced removal, they moved to Caswell, BC. And then from there, they moved to Winnipeg in the 1943, 4, they moved. So Mr. Casey Oyama, who was the editor at that time of the English section, and Mr. T. Mezeki. They were quite instrumental in forming the Manitoba JCCA, like myself, Elmore Kosasaki, Mrs. Sato Hirayama, Tommy Tani, and Casey, and the Milik-san. Fortunately, the Manitoba JCCA, as an organization of that, with the JCCA connotation, I think we were the first one, I think in 45. And then we had to go overseas. Now, speaking of going overseas, you see, like the people who joined, volunteered from Manitoba were the older ones, you know, like myself. Like in my case, you know, like I'm 77 years of age now. Now, since I was about 16, 15, 16, 17, my major concern was to get the right to vote. Because of the fact that you know, we didn't have the right to vote, our job opportunities were just about closed, and we weren't able to get in. Even if you go to university, you got to work in the sawmills, just like, you know, grade 8 or grade high school graduates. So to me, you know, that was the most important thing in our accomplishment for us, I felt, and that's why I was very much involved in this getting the right to vote. And the quickest way to get the right to vote would be to join the armed forces. So a few of us in 1939, when the war was declared in Germany, and Canada being a Commonwealth country, because England is one of the countries that was involved in it at the very first. So, but Canada did not have the conscription imposed, and this is where the Quebec comes in, you know, because the Liberal was in power all the time because they got the Quebec vote. And because of the that conscription thing, it was a volunteer system for at the earlier stage of the war. And a few of us volunteered. I volunteered, and we rejected. And their reason is they would not take any Asiatics. You see, not only myself, like Japanese Canadians, but Chinese Canadians too weren't allowed to join. Now, our Issei, who fought in the First World War, it took them, I think, 14 years before they got the right to vote. But only he himself, that soldier himself, was able to vote, not his family. So, and they were kicked out just the same as we were. Now, so in 1939, well, I volunteered, and then I was rejected. And then the conscription came. So I thought, well, by golly, this is it, you know, we're going to, you know, join the, you know, be able to be called up. And waiting, and what the heck, I mean, all our Occidental friends get, you know, called up. They don't even want to join, for God's sakes. And they were all called up. And, but we were left. So we contacted, when I say we, the Japanese Canadian citizenry called the Minister of Defense, and we were told that they're not going to take us. And then the Pearl Harbor incident came, you see. So I thought, well, by golly, this is good, you know. I thought, you know, when I say this is good, it's because by that time the Japanese Americans were really, you know, make a name for themselves in Europe. But you know, that the Go for Broke show that they made, they rescued the Texas battalion. And then a group of Japanese Americans were already fighting in Burma at that time. And I thought that by God, I'll be able to read and write Japanese to the hyper standard. So I felt that, well, I could be of some use. But instead of being taken in, well, they think I'm a spy or something. Because when I was 17 years of age, well, 4 students were invited to Japan on a speaker. We spent just about 3 months in Japan, speaking in various high school, and universities and all that. And so that went kaput. But my name was still there. So then we kept on pressing, trying to get in. But they wouldn't take us. Then the funny thing was, after I came here, the Australian Air Force came to recruit a person who could speak Japanese, with bilingual. And they give you a wing commander's salary, and heck of a good, thing. But I mean, I'm not joining just for the sake of fighting Japan, I'm joining for the sake of being, recognized as a first-class Canadian citizen. So I told them, I said, no, I said, I'm not going to join you guys. So I refused. And then one day I got a phone call from Ottawa. Major Desichkin phoned me, and he said, Harold, he says, this is it. He said, would you like to go overseas? So I said, yeah, I'll go. And they only wanted 35 linguists, actually. But they want Japanese Canadians. So I said, okay. And then there was like Elmer Oike, Bill Sasaki, and all those, they wanted to join too. But I'm one of the older ones, so they thought that I'm the one that, telling them to join up, but I didn't. But Elmer and Bill, they joined on their own. But the thing was, because of this, I fought the Canadian government for 5 years. I always said I fought 5 years. I was only overseas 1 year, but I fought the Canadian government 5 years just to join up. And you must have heard that, the first group, joined the British Expeditionary Force for 1 day, as a corporal. And the next day we were demoted to buck private in the Canadian Army. And lately, we found out that Winston Churchill phoned Mackenzie King and gave a talking to him, and decided to let us join the Canadian Army. So to me, the redress was very, emotional day. I was in Ottawa that day when Maroon signed, and we were in the gallery, Art Bacon, a few of us. And to me, after all these years, I thought that, I finally became a first-class citizen. So it was a really emotional time for me. That coming back to Manitoba thing, because of this work that the Joint Council did, the forming of the JCCA was really easy. When I say it's easy, because it's a sort of 100% membership sort of a thing. The people that started this Manitoba JCCA were like leaders of the Manisees, like Elmer, Bill Sasaki, and like myself in the Joint Council as well at the Manisees. So they felt that, and Mr. Hirama, Mr. Sato, and all those people who were in the Joint Council. So they felt that you know, well, those guys helped us during the, hard times. Well, they won't do it, so we'll just support them, sort of thing. So that's why we're fortunately, in Manitoba, we haven't had too much trouble, you know, regarding, you hear of all kinds of, you know, troubles in Vancouver and larger centers like Toronto at the time of the Wheatgrass Law especially. But so that was the start of the JCCA at the time. And then the reason for forming the JCCA is just in the 44 that the deportation question came up. The first, it was a franchise thing that we were greatly concerned. And we were always, since in the 36 when we sent the delegation to Ottawa, we were constantly striving to work towards getting our right to vote. So these are the big work that we had to do. And then the government came up with the darn deportation thing. And then we felt that, well, this is wrong, we have to. That is a big reason too for organizing into this Manitoba JCCA. And like the voting thing and all that, well, we got it. But the National JCCA was formed in 1947, and I'm one of the founding members of the organization. And the biggest thing at that time was these two things, and the property laws, this Bird Commission thing. Now, the Bird Commission thing, if you have read that booklet, that's the, that small booklet that I had. Did I bring it here? Or, yeah. These George Tanaka, Kenji Tanaka, Raja Obata. And these are the fellows that they formed what they call a Cooperative Committee on Japanese Canadians in Toronto. And this was the beginning. These people were the people who said that, well, we have to do something. And then with the cooperating groups they're listed here, all the church groups, and so you can take these over and glance it through, and I think it would be beneficial to you, I think. See, because the church groups were quite involved in various activities of the Japanese organizations in our being recognized as a human being, I should say.
Okay.
And I have the but that's Roy, I think you still have it, because there's quite a few things, Art Mickey and them still have my stuff. But well, so far as the redress movement is concerned, after the Bird Commission, as you know, the Bird Commission is through the work of these cooperating groups in all throughout Canada, the church groups as well as other ethnic groups. They felt that the property that the government seized from us. When I say seized, I had a property. Now, when I was working as at the Surrey Rivers Cooperative Association, I bought a 5 acres of land adjacent to my father's property. And my father's property, I don't know whether you know New Westminster or not. You know where the Patalo Bridge crosses towards the American side? That my property is right at the foot of the other side where the bridge crosses. 5 acres of land. And just, Dad started to clear it. And this portion was in my name. And when we were evacuating, or we were being forced out of there, we were told to register our properties. For all other people, custodian of enemy alien property. Can you imagine? Canadian born, and we have to register our property as the custodian of enemy alien property. So it's very ironic in my case, because I went overseas and I came back. And then the people who took over our land, or the government gave to, was to the Veterans Land Act. And this Veterans Land Act are the people who are supposed to look after the resettlement of the returning soldiers, like myself. And I couldn't, when I came back, I have a bunch of letters here that the Judge Advocate's office here in Winnipeg felt that it's really, not the right thing to do, and they felt that I should get my property back, so they contacted the government and all that, but I had to buy my own property. I couldn't buy my own property because the guy wouldn't sell it back to me, but I had to homestead in whatever land at the cheap interest that the government will give me. But so anyways, this the Bird Commission was, because of this land that I was talking to, 5 acres was sold for $35. I got a check for $16 after they deducted registration and legal fees. And I have all the documents here that you can take a look. So, like when the Bird Commission thing came, well, the large number of these people, they felt that it isn't right that they really took it away from us. We were in good faith, we registered our property to the government, and the government, without getting my consent, they disposed of it in their own way, you see. So and then if they sold it at a reasonable price, it was all right, but they really sold at a ridiculous price. So that's where the Bird Commission thing came. And we had hearings, and Mr. Salt Cherniak was our legal counsel at the time. And we weren't satisfied, but we were recommended by our legal counsels, Mr. Andrew Bruin, who was the head legal counsel in Toronto. And he said that, well, we couldn't do any better, so we might as well take it, you see. And quite a number of people didn't want to accept the Bird Commission recommendation. Like in Alberta, there were two groups. They hired their own lawyers, and they thought that they were going to fight, but I mean, finally they decided that what the sense, they're spending a heck of a lot of money and then might not get anywhere. So that's why, reluctantly, we accepted it. So I always felt that I'm going to sue personally the government for my loss of the property. So that's why when the redress matter was, rehashed now, and we were really going after it. Well, I mentioned that fact a number of times that I would, if we can't get anywhere, well, that's a test case. Well, fight the government and see what the heck going to happen. You see. But redress settlement that I had mentioned before, to me, is a culmination of all the, struggle that I had since I was about 16 years old. So to me, it was really the emotional moment when I, Mr. Maroney formally apologized, and they said that, well, this is it. So it meant a heck of a lot to me, anyway. So. Now, you mentioned here, well, there, like, the people who were quite active in the redress movement here, as you know, Art Mickey and the President's Committee, that Lucy Yamashita and Carol, Lucy's sister, what's her name, Carolyn, and Joyce Otto, and various Alan Yoshino, Kojima, and they really worked hard. And there are a lot of other people who, helped in many ways. And fortunately, well, we had opposition here too, but I spoke to them and I mentioned to them that they were the friends of Mr. Imai's group, and but I told them that after talking it over with them, they didn't go public or anything like that, so it was good that. But in Toronto, it was a different thing. In Toronto and Vancouver, there were, and we had here certain people that had, a different way of thinking, but we didn't have any kind of trouble to speak of. So struggle to achieve redress is, I think, I always think that in 1984, when the JCCA, National JCCA president became, in Manitoba here. And see, in order to give you an idea, in 1947, in the labor weekend of 1947, like Roger, myself, Mr. Mizuki, Casey Oyama, and Kinsey Tanaka, and we felt that we have to have a national organization in order to achieve our goal of getting a franchise. That was one thing. And then the deportation thing and all that, the different. So anyways, when we organized in 1947, the labor weekend, Roger Obata became the first president. And then I have a letter here that you could go through that, our budget was only about $7,000, our salary that we were supposed to pay $1,200 to our executive secretary. So then that was the start, and then Tom Shoyama was the second year president, I was the third year president, and Ted Aoki was the next year, and so on and so forth. And then finally, one thing about Japanese, we inherit the same fault from our forefathers. I think any fire or something occurs, well, we all get together and douse the fire, but once it's over, we scatter all over and we forget about it. And that was a pattern that we've been following all these years. And I was one of the people that when we formed the national organization, we felt that we can't be doing this all the time. We have to have a permanent organization. Everybody was gung-ho, and we did it for a few years. And then our problems were solved. Quite considerable part of our problems solved. And then now we have a quota problem. See, people don't start paying their dues. So now we cannot, we had a very fine executive secretary in George Tanaka, and he was a very conscientious person. And, but we couldn't pay his salary anymore because the various chapters won't send in their dues. So what we decided to do was to have a rotation system. And every 2 years, we moved the headquarters to a different area. So we decided at our general meeting, at the national organization meeting, that Quebec decided to take the first 2 years, and that was okay. And then we took over the next 2 years. And our 2 years, when we ended, there's no one else to take it over. So that's the reason why that we had to return the headquarters to Toronto again, you see. And that's where it was dormant for so many years. Until, see, there's always a conflict between the West and the East, just like our political system. The West people think that, well, the East, think because they're near Ottawa and they could do anything. And they forget about the West, and we're getting the raw deal, sort of. So it was like that, and then, so they decided to have Gordon Karuta as president, and they moved the headquarters to Vancouver. Mm-hmm. That is after so many years, mm-hmm. In the 1970s. So what happened? It's a one-man show. Like Mr. Karuta, he's a very intelligent, well-educated person. But there's a limit to what one person can do. He was supposed to have a, bunch of, people under him. But, and then he had good ideas, but he didn't have enough people, under him, that he didn't have the organization to carry out his project, you see. And as I had mentioned before, there's a limit to what one person can do. So that thing petered out. And that's why that the West, by bringing the headquarters to the West, they would be able to do something. And nothing much was done. So in that meeting, 1984, the East was now really gung-ho. They felt that, these guys on the West, leave up to them, and it's worse than before sort of thing. And they felt that they were going to make Jack Oakey the president. That year, when the meeting was held, I was in Mexico, so I didn't take part in that thing. But it so happened that they brought a whole mob of supporters from the east to vote this one particular guy in, you know. And then because the way they solicited the support, some people got the wind of the thing, I guess, so to speak, and by vote of one vote or something that Art Mickey got in. And I think that was the best thing that happened. I just, it isn't because that I'm from Manitoba, but if it wasn't for that organization was in Manitoba, I don't think we could have even, you know, really started seriously on this regret thing and concluded in the way that we were able to do. And this is my honest opinion. I think there is, you know, there are a lot of people contributing, but some people are very ego-minded that they want their name, you know, sort of a thing. But this is not all, to me, it isn't a name or anything. I mean, like myself, I've been this thing for, as I said, from my youth. And to accomplish anything like that, it isn't a one-man show. It has to be everybody's, and it's everybody's business. It isn't your own business, you know. That fortunately, while we had a very capable people here, you know, a lot of people think the prairie people are a bunch of farmers, you know, but I think we showed them that we're not that bad. But that's all kidding aside. But I mean, you know, we were fortunate that Art became a president, and under the president, we had a system whereby, you know, people who assisted Art alone wouldn't be able to do anything. But you know, I think I always mention this, and you'll be happy to hear this because, but you know, like women, you know, we take women too lightly. You know, if you want any organization, you take a look at any organization. Like if you have a strong women's auxiliary or anything of that type, they get work done. We men seem to talk a lot, you know, but we got ideas and all that. But when you come to really conclude anything, you know, you have to get people to shove you from the back and nag you, and you know they tell you who will nag you to death, but that's true too in a way. But you know, we were fortunate that among our supporters and who are very concerned about the redress, we had a good women group. They like Lucy and Caroline, Carol, and Vivian, and you know, there's Joy Otto. And you know, they really did. If it wasn't for them, you know, these things that we accomplished couldn't have been done. If this was somewhere else, and you know, we wouldn't be able to meet the deadline, so to speak. You know, everything really went well, because if we didn't conclude that in 1988, I bet you, you know, we would have one heck of a time. I think we're still fighting. You know. But it so happened the Americans did a lot for us. Reagan, Mr. Reagan, that's the biggest job that he ever did for us, I think. You know, he decided, and that I always tell American people that, like 2 years ago when we were invited to the Japanese American Vets Reunion in Hawaii, Roger Obata, and we went and we thanked them. That you know, although they're the one that really initiated first, and they got the okay from the government, but we got the money first. You know, we got the settlement first. So, so far as the people who are very much involved in the free press and who were able to make us conclude in a successful way, I think women in our community had a lot to do with it. I think, you know, I give credit to the ladies. And you know, we were able to, because of the fact that we have an organization here that everybody, you know, they work together. They didn't do just for your own, you know, thing. I think that had a heck of a lot of bearing on it to achieve this redress. And so far as the redress settlement is symbolized to me, it's, I had mentioned before, it was really a culmination of all the struggles that I had ever since I was a youth. And I felt that, I really felt that that was the first time that I felt that I could, you know, I'm Canadian now. Because it's a good feeling to, you know, even if you like, I have here some article that Frank Moritsugu wrote right after the, during the redress, when we were fighting for the redress, that he went overseas with me too. And he said that when he came back, he had the registration thing, a Japanese, we had a Japanese, special Japanese registration, you heard of it, eh? We had a overall, you know, all Canadians were registered at one time. And then they had a special registration for Japanese only. We were mug shot and we were fingerprinted and everything, you know. And this RCMP sergeant told Frank after he came back from overseas, he says, you know, go and take a better picture. You know, your thing is getting soiled. And he wrote about it. You should read those things too. It's interesting, you know. That was in the Free Press.
Oh.
Yeah, he wrote a special article in the Free Press. So, although we're a very small minority group, that this human rights issue that we fought against the government is a big achievement that a lot of people don't realize, I don't think. That we're not the only one, you know. They think that, well, we just fought for $21,000. It isn't a question of 21,000 bucks. It's a big achievement that any Canadians, you know, if, well, they could be treated the same way that we were treated, you know, in that, and we put a stop to that now, I think. And now the Chinese people, the Ukrainian people, and all those people are, and especially Aboriginal people, I think. I was, like Kiko wasn't able to go for the Mantle JCCA, so, you know, we had an invitation from the Aboriginal group to attend the launching of the Royal Commission at Folks.
Mm-hmm.
And Art and I went. And I've noticed that the only ethnic group that was really supportive of the Aboriginal rights, you know, was the Mennonite people, who were the first one to acknowledge their wrongs, and you know, they started that scholarship, I think $10,000 thing. But when one thing that we must realize is, this is one thing that I've been saying and all the time, you know, all these years, is you know, we have to have a communication link with other ethnic groups, other organizations. That is one thing that's lacking. You see, we've got JCCA. You know, I've been, you know, brought up this thing a number of times in our meetings that we should have contact with the Chinese group. Not only when we have trouble, you know,
Mhm.
but when, on the normal course of our, you know, work, that we should have a link there that we could invite them to our social things, or, you know, we go to their meeting, they could, you know, come to our meeting, and so on and so forth. And cultural exchange
Mhm.
things is very essential. I think that is one of the work that from now on the JCCA should be doing,
Mhm.
because you know, they're very appreciative of what we are doing, I found out. Spoke to the Inuit people at that time, and as well as the Aboriginal and Métis. The like Chinese group too, like in during Fokorama time. See, there's so, you know, one year I acted as a queen judge for Fokorama, and when the voting comes, you know, see, they gang up on you. The Polish and Ukrainian, those people are very influential. They got the population, the Germans and the Jewish people too. But when they're voting for the Queen thing, you know, they really, the politics get involved, the racial. So I got hold of all the Asiatic group, the Philippines and Filipinos and Chinese, and I had a meeting with them, and but when we got the Franco-Canadian princess, the queen that time, the Jewish people wanted theirs, and boy, they were really, you know, organized to get their, you know, support from the other organization, and I got my group, and we packed the brand, and we won, you know. But it isn't that kind of thing that I'm talking about, but I mean, by having this closer connection with the other minority groups or other ethnic groups, see, then not only at the time when we are fighting for something that, you know, you just go and ask, you know, hey, you know, we're getting persecuted. He says, why not, you know, help us? Or, you know, it doesn't, you don't get that clout, you know, the people would really come out and help you if you come to know them well, and, you know, it works both ways. So I think that is very important. Like, even now the Olympic is on, it's the same thing by mixing, you know, politics, you know, things get ugly. But I mean, if the people themselves come to know each other well, and I think and everything should work well. I think, so that is, in my view, I think, you know, it is important for, you know, a lot of people say this, that now there's intermarriage, so you're going to lose the culture, you know. You'll be eaten away, all the things going to go. But I don't believe that. I think that the funny thing is, I have 4 sons, but 3 of them are married, and my eldest is the only one that married a Japanese girl. My second one married a girl from Glasgow, Scotland. And I would tease her that we don't even speak English, I tell her, you know. She doesn't learn how to speak English, I'll pull her leg, you know. But my daughter-in-laws have more interest in things Japanese than my own sons, you know. And I've been hearing the same thing from other friends of mine. Their daughters or sons are married, you know. to other ethnic groups. And I think it's to your advantage to come to know other cultures, and to first of all to know your own culture too, a bit. But I mean, the thing is, what I found out in acting as a judge for this, and then I was on the selecting committee or selection committee for these jet programs, these, you know, like Cheryl Nakamura and them in Japan. Now, it's a funny thing that the Canadian students don't know their own country as much as they should. You know, if I was going to apply for any kind of that type of a thing, I would really study the history of our own country as well as the country that you're going.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's amazing, you know, about, you know, 70 some odd people that applied. A lot of them, you know, they don't know nothing, not too much about their own country.
Mm.
You see, so like I think it's the duty of the parents to give education, you know, proper education to the kids. I mean, that's their responsibility. But I mean, you gotta see to it that the people who are giving is the right kind of people at the same time. But especially in our case, I think the Niseis are lacking in, you know, they don't want to talk about their, you know, what they went through to their kids, which is, I think, is wrong, because the kids want to know. I'm not telling my kids to hate the Anglo-Saxons who persecuted us and all that, you know. These things happen all over the world. It's happening every day. But I mean, you got to know what kind of struggle that your father, your grandfather, your grandparents, or whatever, you know, went through. And I think it's a plus on your part, you know. So that's the reason why that I'm, you know, making a family tree thing interesting. I'm taping it, as well as I got the documents all, you know, from, you know, my grandfather, where they came from, and you know what, and then you know what my parents did, and then what I did, what I have to go through. So that's my work that I'm trying to do now. And I always mention to a lot of my Nisei friends that you know, they should be telling their stories to their kids, because the kids want to know, you know. You don't want to hear some things about what the Japanese people did from somebody else. You should be able to know something that your own, you know, folks did. But you know, like getting back to the JCCA, when we organized this Manitoba Japanese Canadian Citizens Association, in those days, there were a lot of Isseis yet. There are very few Issei male now, or let alone it's very few older Nisei males now, for God's sake. So we had organized the Isseibu, the Issei section, and the Nisei section. Okay? So we had 25, you know, committee, the executive members from both sides. You know. So by total of 25, but we had split in Issei and Issei. And Manitoba was the first place that, you know, tried to, you know, it started like that, and then we start to let the Nisei take over, and then now the Sansei she take over. We were the first one to get a Nisei woman president of the JCCA. You know, Keiko's older sister, you know, Grace, in 1955. I think she was the president. And she and I in those days, you asked me about, you know, what we were doing after in the 50s and 60s. Now even in 50s and 60s, to this day, I still go to Kiwanis and Rotaries and all that and talk about our forced removal and what we had to go through as a Canadian of Japanese racial origin, that we had to go through. And the people said, gee, did we, you know, did a thing like that happen in Canada? No. So it's by transition, you know, I think one fault that if you say it's a fault, I think it is a fault, that we transferred our responsibility too soon, you know, gave up, and then transferring is okay by having an advisory group, you know, like we had when we first, Issei Nisei, when the Issei got older, well, we made them as an advisor thing, you know, for a while, eh? But we didn't do that in the case of an Nisei transferring into Sansei. See, and these people, I have mentioned at one of your executive meetings last time, you know, the people who served well as an executive, once they finish their term, they you know, that's it. So that is no good. I think that type of thinking has to be changed. I think that, you know, although the person like that, their expertise is still needed, you know, and the change can't be just cut off. You know, you got to have somebody that still has that. You know, like when I was president so many years ago, and the president in the last about 10 years ago was completely different. You know, the activities had changed, and you know, so you need somebody that has still that close link with the activities that are going around in that era, you know, that era. So I hope that you young people now, as you go now, the Sansei, Yonsei is going to start coming in. Okay? So I think you should have an advisor system sort of and carry on the organization. And I strongly believe that you have to have this closeness with other ethnic groups. I think that's a thing that we got to be doing. That's all. Any questions that you would like to ask?
Covered quite a bit of ground on every question is covered on the sheet.